Hello, everyone, and welcome to another installment of TEDXcellence, the show in which I attempt to broaden my horizons by narrowing my focus and drinking all the way through. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Thursday. Hope you're all having a good day. I had a particularly chaotic evening last night because immediately after Lords of the Night, I get a text message from work. I had been getting ready to go to bed. I go to bed early because I get up early. And I got a text from work, and I had to work. So instead of going to bed, I had to stay attached to my desk for another hour and a half, 2 hours than I otherwise wouldn't have. And yeah, so that was my night last night. And so now, after another day of work, I am particularly needing a little bit of an escape. And what better way to escape, what better way to let off a little steam than to watch a TEDx with all of you? This is my world now. And in this world, I'm living in my Corona bunker on the moon with Dog Cat Fox, A Pepperjack, and all of you. And speaking of all of you who have decided to join me today, Jaeger Pony, hello. Raziel, hello. Keeverdam, hello. Maniac Man 2030, hello. Sununul Nation, hello. Humble Clay, hello. Dectran, hello. The Luke Skywalker 2, hello. Zombie Teddy, hello. This is Kyle, hello. Attack Alpaca, hello. Groff Spree, hello. Roger Reynolds, hello. I think I'm caught up. That one servant of Satania, hello. Angela Ariaga, hello. And that's it for the present. I'll say a couple more hellos before we get into it. Oh, and Mike Savage, blarg. So what do we have on deck for today? Well, we have disrupting the school to prison pipeline. Disrupting the school to prison pipeline. Now, what is the school to prison pipeline, you may ask? Well, it is variously defined in my experience, but this is my general understanding. So I'll use this as a baseline before we get into this presentation. My understanding of the theory of the school to prison pipeline is that if you are a student and either fairly or unfairly, justly or unjustly, you are subjected to detention or punishment or especially suspension or indeed expulsion over the course of your school life in childhood, this will better, I guess, cement your fate into becoming a criminal later on in life. That is the overall very core notion of it. Now, there's various things attached to that and notions about motivation and statistics and so on, but I will refrain from adding anything that our speaker does not. Again, that's just my baseline understanding of the theory at the end of the day. So let us begin into that. But Blake Becker, hello. Atheist Icon, hello. Lurking Gopher, hello. Andrew Joyner, hello. I think that's everybody so far. All right, guys, per usual, ritual as it is, I will start off with a couple of seconds of sound for you guys to verify that you can hear it. I have cleaned up the audio a bit, gotten some of the background noise out and boosted it for volume. So hopefully it should be good. Let me know what you hear.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Everybody hear the good afternoon? Sean Uli, hello. Let's see. Hey, I share, but my AdSense. Okay. Sounds good. This is a summambulation. Perfect, says Humble Clay. Perfect. Oh my gosh. Perfect. All right. Dr. Benjamin Williams. Ooh, a doctor. I always have to ask, a doctor of what? Maybe he'll tell us.
So we'll try that again. I'm a principal of a school, so call and response is extremely important to me. Good afternoon.
Principal of a school. Okay, so a doctor and a principal of a school. Okay, well, if anybody should know about the school to prison pipeline, it should be our speaker. And with that, first sip. Let's begin.
If everybody can please sit up, put your hands on your knees, close your eyes for a second, breathe through your nose, and
what if I don't have a nose, you ableist? First thing that came to mind.
Out through your mouth as you hear the next few words.
Oh boy, here we go.
Please keep your eyes closed.
Okay, all right. My eyes are closed.
Imagine a child
Okay.
who was born to a prostitute who has 2 kids by 2 different men by the age of 20.
Okay.
Imagine a child who experiences mental, physical, emotional, and sexual abuse countless times while growing up in the worst social welfare system in our nation.
Dude, I thought I felt bad before I started this with my workday and everything. Now I feel terrible. Jeez. All right. I'm reluctantly imagining such a scenario.
Now imagine a child who sees its sibling admitted to a mental institution.
Okay, is this the beginning of some kind of like supervillain origin story or something? I'm not saying that this stuff doesn't actually happen, or maybe he's citing a real life incident or something, but all the same, it's like, ugh.
Imagine another child.
Okay.
Who experiences their sibling being killed.
Oh, Jesus.
Now open your eyes and look around. Somebody in this room has experienced one or some of these scenarios.
Yes. If you name off any number of horrible, horrible circumstances from that list in a room full of people, the odds that someone in there may have experienced one or something similar to one of those things. Yes. Okay. That's like how many people here have ever thought that they weren't good enough? You see that in TEDx talks sometimes. They'll stand on the stage and they'll ask a question that is almost universally true to any adult. But okay, you got very specific while being very generalized.
Well, unfortunately, I've experienced all of them.
Oh, okay. I should have seen that coming. Ouch.
My adverse childhood experiences score is a solid 10 out of 10. But I don't tell you that story today for sympathy. Because I'm also Benjamin Williams, PhD. I'm the principal of Ron Brown College Preparatory High School.
Okay, now, setting aside whatever facetiousness I might otherwise inject into such a situation, with all sincerity, congratulations to him, and human sympathy extended. If all of that is true, holy crap. And if he was able to dig his way out of those circumstances to become a principal of a school and get a PhD, even if it's a PhD in underwater basket weaving, I don't care. All credit to him. All right, so he already has my respect before we even begin.
I'm the godfather to 2 amazing young people. I am the guardian of an awesome 17-year-old young man, and I'm the companion of a vicious lion killer that's right behind me. You all are lying. Why are you laughing? He's a lion killer. Seriously, he's a scary beast, all right?
Okay, and like I said, on a cursory personal level, I have a lot of respect for this guy. Now, let's see if we can get to what he has to say.
All jokes aside, I'm here today to talk about why. Your why. See, your why is not always going to be grounded in what you want. Your why is going to be grounded in your fundamental belief of how you can change the world.
My why. Okay.
Your why is a gift to ensure that at least one person life is changed because of you.
Like, why am I here? Is that the why we're looking at? Or why, why am I here? What is my purpose? That kind of thing.
Your why is not always going to be immediately clear. Many times you're going to resist your why. But when you do know and own your why, dive in head first, 1000%.
I need you to define to me what you mean by my why. Because either you're talking about some kind of internal, introspective, personal path or goal or something, or you're talking about the Young Men's Christian Association down the street that I guess just by proximity I could call my why. I guess.
I was all in for a bold endeavor that I knew was going to change the educational landscape of Washington, D.C.
Okay.
Our current mayor and one of our former chancellors had this idea to create a resource to empower young men of color in this city.
Why limit it by race? Why limit it by gender? Why can't you empower the youth collectively? And in fact, when it comes to schools and initiatives and such, short of it being like sports, limiting initiatives or opportunities to students on the basis of race and or gender is would be, I don't know the details yet, but would be a violation of the Education Amendment of the Civil Rights Act and possibly Title IX. I need more information.
Because at that time, 19% of young men of color were reading on grade level. 48% of young men of color were graduating high school within 4 years.
Okay, so what role did the parents play in this stuff? I mean, I learned to read at home, at least the remedial, before I even entered school for the most part, so, okay.
16% of young men of color who were leaving to 4 years institutions were graduating within 5 years.
Okay.
And today, as a young man of color growing up in this city, you're more likely to go to jail than you are to go to college.
Okay. Again, I'll take his statistics on their face without knowing if they're accurate or not, but all right.
That's my why.
Okay.
Prior to the opening of our school, the ACLU campaigned vigorously against the opening of a single-sex public high school targeting a specific population.
You mean a public school just for a particular gender and race? I can see why they would have questions about that given the law. But I don't know if there are options within the law to do that.
According to them, it was discriminatory and biased.
It is inherently discriminatory if you have a school that is limited by gender and race, especially if it's publicly funded. You're not going to tell me it's not discriminatory, are you?
But as I stated earlier, we just wanted to be an additional resource to the landscape.
Additional resources, fine, but there are laws. Maybe I missed something. He did say public institution, right? He didn't say this was a private school?
The 10 years prior to me applying to this position, I had been doing research, leading professional developments around the idea that drastic changes were needed to the K-12 institution to address young men of color.
I could repeat myself, but I'll just use this pause to, euphemistically repeat myself.
When I had the chance to open this school, I knew that the institution alone was not going to put a dent in the school-to-prison pipeline.
Right. Well, so far you still haven't defined what your why is. And now that you've mentioned it, you need to define what you mean by school-to-prison pipeline.
Because our culture had to be different. Our expectations had to be high and consistent. The people that I got on the bus with me to lead this work had to be prepared and ready to go. And the individual approach to the young man had to be revolutionary.
Okay, I'm not going to rewind all the way, but chat, refresh my memory if you noticed, because obviously maybe I missed something. Was he talking about a public institution, a public school? Did I mishear him? Or did my brain just sort of like turn the word private into public? Because if he's talking about a public school that is restricted to a specific gender and a specific race, I'm not quite sure how that passes. Annalyn says he did say public school. Okay. Humble Clay says go ahead and rewind. It's several minutes back and I don't know, but I'll take your guys' word for it. Because like I said, I don't think I misheard him, but just for some corroboration. I'm going to have to look this up after this show because this sounds bizarre to me. I'm wondering what leeway in federal law provided for this to occur.
We also had to make sure that the school was grounded in something different. We made sure that it was grounded in restorative justice.
Okay. Well, this is a crossover. This is almost like a comic book where you get like the Thing from the Fantastic Four teams up with the Punisher or something. So we got the school to prison pipeline and restorative justice. Okay. Well, I'm all ears.
Advocacy, ownership, self-belief, voice, and social change.
Okay, so you had a public school restricted to a specific gender and then a specific race with a social ideology being promoted within this public school without question. I mean, no couching of language or anything. Okay, got it.
Now, as an adult, transitioning to a space like that when you're accustomed to a punitive school environment could be extremely difficult. You know those schools that say, if you do X, then the consequence is Y.
Yeah, setting expectations for actions and reactions in life. It's a terrible lesson to learn as a kid. Oh, wait, that's called teaching a kid. I don't know. Maybe we should be talking about what goes on at the home first with the parents, rather than putting the onus on the schools to teach action, reaction, action and consequence, maybe. Analin says, I just replayed it. He said public school. Okay. All right. I just want to make sure I understand. That's what I'm mostly here to do, to try to understand.
We wanted to make sure that every young man that walked through our doors understood that their voices should never, ever be suppressed. We wanted to make sure that they understood that they should advocate for themselves, that they can become young men of high character, that you can learn to own your behaviors.
But what if your voice is advocating for the harm of others? What if it's a call to action to do something destructive or violent? Should that ever, never be oppressed or suppressed? I know, I'm being a nitpicker, but when people talk in grand absolutes like that, I always have to ask, are there no exceptions?
That you can become a lifelong learner, and you will be an agent of change.
An agent of change. Okay, so your school is meant to produce a specific mindset to then evangelize out into the world, the mindset being taught in this very cloistered, very segregated school. And I'm not off base in using that word given his description of what this school is meant to be. So, okay, public school, again, not private school, not a private religious school or something, but a public school meant to create agents of change. Got it.
So some of you already have done your Google search and know that we were followed by NPR and we became podcast famous a few years ago.
Whoa, that was it. Okay, that cut was not me. That edit there, because he just suddenly went for, let me back up a little bit. And also, I've never heard of this guy. I've never heard of podcast famous. I wish I was podcast famous. Thank you, tall person. Hoy, y'all. Just got home from work and we'll watch in full later. Happy International Hamburger Day, everybody. Ooh, thank you, tall person. Hamburger Day. I haven't had lunch yet. Maybe I'll try to I haven't had a hamburger in a long time. Ooh, anyway. I just want to see that edit again because it seemed to jump. I noticed the jump, and I just want to make sure it's understood. That wasn't me. I didn't edit none of this except for the sound and boosting it.
Your Google search and know that we were followed by NPR and we became podcast famous a few years ago. For those of
see, his arms were at his side, and all of a sudden his arms are out. So something was cut out there. I'm wondering what it was.
Podcast famous a few years ago. For those of you that do not know, we allowed in our first year 2 reporters from NPR to follow us around every day. That means as when I walked into the building, when I went into a meeting, when I came out of the bathroom, there was a boom mic in my face somewhere.
Wow, letting the press into a segregated boys' school of social justice activism. Wow, you're not trying to crow or nothing. Yeah, okay.
But what they saw and were able to report on is that we were struggling, that there was a lot of pain,
okay,
that there were tears,
okay.
but they also saw the successes.
Why were there tears and pain in a public school? What were you doing?
And I did all of this as a first-year principal. Anybody that ever moves into a position of leadership, do not ever let the media into your space for your first year, because there's a lot of struggles. Trust me, I did a lot of things that I would now look back on. I'm like, wow, yeah, you shouldn't have done that.
Wait a sec. Okay, your first principal job is an experimental, racially and gender discriminatory school meant to produce agents of change. That is your first experience as a principal of a school. Okay.
But what they saw was that our community was about holding everybody accountable.
It's not a community, it's a school. Are you there to educate people, or are you there to groom people towards an ideological end? Because if you're there to groom people towards an ideological end, I'm not sure you're a school at that point, rather than an indoctrination camp.
Right? You had to own your participation in the harm. You had to own your emotions.
What?
You had to speak on your emotions.
Why? What? Wait, did you say party to the harm? I'm sorry, guys. I got to back up. I don't want to make a mistake here in what I'm hearing, because that's happened in a couple of streams in the past, and I've acted on mistakes without going back to double check. So I just want to make sure I'm hearing what I'm hearing.
Our community was about holding everybody accountable.
Okay, your community, not school, but community, was about holding everybody accountable. Accountable for what? Exactly.
Right? You had to own your participation in the harm.
Participation in the harm. What harm? Who is being held accountable and for what? I know these are probably going to be rhetorical questions, but I'm bewildered.
You had to own your emotions. You had to speak on your emotions. And then you had to be collaborative with the individual who may have caused you harm, to be solution-oriented, to ensure that the harm didn't happen again.
Oh, we're into the restorative justice part of it. Okay, so everyone has to be held accountable for someone else's actions. So even if I am the innocent victim of someone else's actions, whether it be, I don't know, assault, theft, accusation, whatever, somehow I am a part and I am accountable for that having been done to me. Is that what I'm hearing here? Because that's usually what restorative justice involves. It's sort of like somehow tries to find an equilibrium between the victim and the perpetrator, whether you're talking about actual like legal crimes or just misdeeds, which doesn't make any sense at all, but that's the gist of restorative justice as I've been led to understand it. Okay, so you've got a school where everybody's accountable for their part in the harm. Even if they had nothing to do with the harm, they're still accountable as a community, because it's a community and not a school, and it's a commune and not a place of learning or something.
To make a long story short,
too late.
We were empowering young men to use their voices instead of responding in a hyper-masculine way that society teaches them.
Oh boy, do we have toxic masculinity in here too? Good God, is this Thanksgiving? Because this video is a cornucopia of concepts that I've encountered way too often. Okay, so you have a public school segregated by gender and race, meant to create agents of change while reducing the amount of hypermasculinity in its students, while also practicing restorative justice where everyone is held accountable for their part in the harm, presumably even if the harm is nothing that they had anything to do with. You know, I have been looking for a definition of utopia, and man, I think I might have found it.
We wanted to make sure that the circle occurred, because in a circle, everybody can see each other.
Ah, circles. Okay, we talked about this in the last video I did regarding restorative justice. Circles. Circles are the cure to the criminal justice system as it currently stands. You have a circle, like a support group, and the circle hashes out the problems between perpetrator and victim without having to penalize anyone for what they did. I guess because that would lead to the school to prison pipeline. And so we head off the pipeline by making a circle. Right? And this is where Cenk Uygur would say, right?
Nobody is greater than another person. Nobody is less than another person.
Really? Really? I mean, as far as the human being aspect, I could probably agree with you, but depending on one's behavior and treatment of others, I might look down on someone as a lesser person than someone else who doesn't harm people or doesn't take advantage of people. I can't think of any scenario off the top of my head where I would still look down on someone as lesser for the actions they undertook against others. Okay.
Everybody's voice is heard and valued.
Uh-huh.
And at the end of the day,
yeah,
the circle could last 1 hour or it can last 5 hours.
You want to keep students in a support group circle for 5 hours, if necessary, to what? Make the victim apologize to the perpetrator? Or what is the purpose of that?
And as one of our young men in our first year so eloquently put it, he was very eloquent when he said this. Y'all always trying to restore some shh.
Were you trying to undercut your own point there?
Now wait,
okay, that wasn't the lead into a joke? So your eloquent example is a student completely undercutting and insulting the process of restorative justice. Did I? Holy cats, man. Guys, I don't even know what to say. This has been an absolute smorgasbord so far. I think I might be speechless for a moment.
One circle that I remember vividly involved Jay, our mental health team, who we call our care team, our assistant principals, and myself.
Your mental health team. Your school, and I'm going to assume it's a high school of some kind, or junior high, somewhere in there. I mean, he didn't mention what grades he was servicing with this school, but I'm going to assume it's like junior high and or through high school. You have a mental health team. Do these kids, is this like, do they not go home? Do they not have families? Do they not have friends and relatives or something? Is this like some kind of public boarding school, or are they completely without a support system of one kind or another outside of the school? I need more information.
The circle had two reasons.
Uh-huh.
One, we wanted to celebrate Jay because according to Jay, he had never had a birthday party before.
Oh, Okay, that's very sad. How old is Jay? Again, I don't even, unless he mentioned it and I missed it, I don't think he said what grades his school handled or what kind of school it was.
But the other thing we wanted to do was have a hard conversation about Jay's future.
Really? Boy, that sounds like the best birthday ever.
You see, at that time, Jay was a 17-year-old ninth grader.
Okay, so this is junior high or middle school. Okay, a 17-year-old ninth grader. That's pretty bad. Where were Jay's parents? What was his family situation? Just curious.
Who, in our first semester of our first year, had done nothing to gain credits towards graduation.
Well, that would be Jay's responsibility, wouldn't it?
Jay was doing harm to himself and his future.
I can agree with you on that. Jay's decisions not to do his homework or try to get himself out of that situation were indeed him doing harm to himself.
But in that circle was one of the most authentic conversations I had with a young person.
Uh-huh.
Jay told us because of our school, it was the first time that he actually enjoyed going to school because he knew that somebody cared for him.
Okay, thank you, John Miller. This square is obsessed with circular logic. Maybe triangulate a point. Hi-oh! All right, well, again, taking our speaker at his word, Jay sounds like he's had a very rough life, although we don't know the details, at least not yet. This school's the first place he felt like somebody cared and then he wanted to come to school. Okay, so why had he not done anything to try to work his way out of being in ninth grade for the ninth grade? How old was I in ninth grade? Good God. Like was that his second or third time around in ninth grade? Something like that. So if he felt so supported and loved and cared about at that birthday party, why did you need to have an intervention?
Because of our culture. Jay felt confident in himself.
Then why did you need to have an intervention at his birthday party?
And because of the people that he had met at the school, he felt comfortable asking for help.
Okay, so he asked for help at the intervention?
And then he looked everybody in their eyes and asked us to help him graduate high school.
Okay, well, good for him for taking the initiative at that point, at an intervention. Okay.
Now, unfortunately, not all circles have a happy ending.
Oh, don't tell me.
But they start the conversation.
Oh, well, I wasn't being literal. I didn't mean don't tell me. I mean, like, okay, so what happened to Jay?
And for our young men in our school, that's a step in the right direction.
No. What happened to Jay? You don't get to, no. You don't get to say not all circles have a happy ending right after telling us about Jay and not tell us about what happened to Jay. I mean, did he graduate? You're going to tell us, right? Before this is over? There's only 2 minutes left.
Because they're just that, young men.
Uh-huh.
Young men who are still learning.
Uh-huh.
Young men who are still going to make mistakes.
Right.
And many of their mistakes are going to be age appropriate. As adults, we learn that it is our responsibility to educate, not to continue to perpetuate the criminalization of young men of color.
Well, hold on. Hold the phone. This guy is making such leaps in his argument/presentation that there's just giant gaps of logic and reason going on here. Okay, so you have this public school segregated. And again, I'm just going off of what he's describing. I do not know the details of this, but assuming that what he's saying is true, He is the principal of a public school that is specifically segregated by race and gender in order to promote agents of change while practicing restorative justice in order to, as the title of the presentation implies, disrupt the school to prison pipeline. Even though not all circles have a happy ending, so he's not going to tell us of any positive outcomes from all of this. I would, again, there's a minute and a half, 2 minutes left in this. Maybe he's going to tell us about his star pupil as the example of what can happen from his school, but I'm just bewildered.
We wanted to give them.
Yeah, what are we clapping for? Sentiment? Intention? Yeah, oh yeah, I'll clap all day for sentiment and intention, but what are the results?
It was our job to give them the skills to be productive citizens.
Well, I guess that's one way to look at being a teacher in a high school or a junior high school, but you're an institute of education, not necessarily an institute of social behavior. I mean, I understand, trust me, the line between teacher, counselor, sort of life coach can be very fuzzy in education. I get that. But it really all depends on the mentality you're going into the situation with. Are you an educator first, or are you an advocate first? Are you a teacher first, or are you a community leader first? That's what always gets seemingly lost in some of these conversations or presentations by educators. I don't know.
However they choose, not a statistic.
Right, statistics.
History says that a big reaction is caused by bold and courageous change.
Not necessarily. A big reaction can be started by something very small. That's why you get the whole spark into a conflagration sort of, analogy. Not necessarily, but it can be, just not inherently. Maybe I'm being nitpicky. Sorry.
Change to systems such as the school to prison pipeline, because that's a civil rights issue.
You still have not told us what the school to prison pipeline is. In order to dissect a concept, you need to explain the concept. You have not done that. You've used the phrase, but you haven't told us. You also haven't told us that no one from your school went on to become a criminal. That's really the thing I was expecting to hear at some point, is that you've kept track of all of your graduates, and all of them have stayed away from crime or something like that. But you haven't said that. Why haven't you said that?
Change to the unequitable funding for K-12 education, because that's a human rights issue.
Unequitable You're a public school. You're an experimental public school that segregates on the basis of race and color. If you're not getting the same funding as other schools, I can kind of understand why. You're servicing a subset of the population. I might be out of my depth. I don't know. Thank you, Non Vitae Rex. Joined late. What's this dude talking about? Also, hi, Scribe. Hi, Rex. Well, he's telling us ostensibly about a school he is the principal of that is operating on some very unique policies, and how it is meant to, quote unquote, disrupt the school to prison pipeline, unquote, which he hasn't actually described what the school to prison pipeline is, and neither has he told us that his school, unique as it is, has achieved that goal, I guess.
Change to the decrease of young men of color who are graduating high school and college, because that's an extinction issue.
Well, wait, change to the decrease? Does he mean like, maybe I misheard how he said that. I'm gonna back up.
Funding for K-12 education, because that's a human rights issue.
Okay, so your school is a K through 12 school, somewhere in there. You talked about a ninth grader. Okay, so you're in a, elementary through high school situation. I don't know the specifics, but I'm going to assume somewhere in between middle school and high school. Okay, what was that about college and graduations?
Change to the decrease of young men of color who are graduating high school and college.
Change to the decrease of men of color. So is he saying that the number of men of color graduating from high school and college is decreasing and that's what he wants to change? Or I can't believe he was saying he's trying to change towards a decrease. So I'm sorry, guys. I'm out of my sorts here.
Because that's an extinction issue.
An extinction issue. I really wish people would take the time to define their terms instead of throwing out buzzwords and just, I don't know, expecting the rest of us to understand what they're talking about. Thank you, Drew W. School funding doesn't equal better teaching. All schools get 5 times more per pupil than Warner Robins and his worst districts in Georgia. I don't know what Warner Robins is. I'm assuming that's a Georgia situation. But no, school funding doesn't equal better teaching. Just like throwing a bunch of money at a movie production doesn't equate to the next Godfather. It all depends on the acumen, the experience, the skill, etc. of the human beings involved. So, I don't know the situation of his school. I don't know what he's talking about, because he's throwing out all these claims and facts and or conclusions and or phrases without any context or explanation. So if this is how he runs a formal presentation, I don't know, how does he run his school?
And all of these issues need to be addressed.
All of these issues. What issues? Funding? Okay. What else? The graduation rates of men of color. Okay, they need to be addressed. What's your solution? Or what is the current process and how is it flawed? How would you improve it? Saying that you see a problem might be great. Maybe you've identified a problem. That's wonderful. Do you have a solution? Do you have a suggestion? Anything? Is your school the solution? Because so far you haven't even listed one success story. I would think you'd have at least one success story from your school. I haven't heard it. And what happened to Jay?
Now appease me one more time.
Okay.
If I can get everybody to sit up again.
Uh-huh.
Put your hands on your knees again.
Uh-huh.
Close your eyes.
Mm-hmm.
Breathe through your nose and out through your mouth. As you hear these words from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.
Oh, come on. Dude, why do they always escape to a quote from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.? How many TEDx's have I watched now where someone concludes or tries to base their argument on a quote from Martin Luther King Jr., taken out of context and or transmogrified to somehow support their notion? It just never seems to fail. Never seems to fail. But okay, you've made no argument. You've presented no detailed problem other than there's a statistical disparity. Right. Okay. These problems need to be addressed. School funding and the rates of graduation among men of color. Okay. Very broad and abstract. What did Martin Luther King have to say about you and your school?
when he was talking to the servants of the civil rights movement. And at the same time, think about your why.
I don't even know what my why is. You haven't even said what is that supposed to mean? My why, my reason for being, my why am I on this earth kind of thing? I don't know. I mean, if you're talking about my motivation to do something, okay. But you framed it in such a very specific way about being an activist, an agent of change for your particular viewpoint on the world. If that's what it is, I don't have a why, because I'm pretty sure my why isn't going to align with your why. At some point in the future, I'm going to listen back to this, maybe, and I'm going to listen to myself, and I'm going to wonder, what the hell are you talking about?
If you cannot fly, then run. If you cannot run, then walk. If you cannot walk, then crawl. But whatever you do, never stop moving forward. Now open your eyes and go out there and cause a big reaction in this small world. Thank you.
And what are my limits on what I'm doing to cause that reaction? Any safeguards? Any restrictions? Any rules? I don't know, guys. I'm honestly very surprised, because when someone comes out and says, I initiated this project, or I undertook this, let's say, quest, for lack of a better word, usually the story has an ending, right? There's 3 acts. There's the opening, I came from a life of absolute and total misery, as our speaker described, and I take him at his word. Again, all respect to him for having climbed out of that set of circumstances, which is insane, and become a productive member of society. Great. All respect in the world. So that's the start. The middle is he wants to impart something about overcoming adversity and obstacle that he's done himself onto others. Okay, you know what? I can respect that notion too. I really can. There's no third act to this presentation. There's no, here's what happened as a result of my efforts. There was only Jay, the 17-year-old ninth grader, who at his first birthday party, initiated by a circle at this school, asked for help, and then we're left with the not every circle ends in a happy ending, or results in a happy ending. And then nothing more. Like, what happened to Jay? This story is missing its conclusion. And everything after that, honestly, everything after dropping the story of Jay sounded like just pablum to me. Just platitudes. Nothing. There was no payoff. So is his school successful in any way, shape, or form in achieving what he said it is? Or said it is meant to? Thank you, John Miller. I have a dream that people would stop using my quotes out of context and as a weapon, jackasses, MLK's ghost. There's plenty of great Martin Luther King quotes that can be universal. I'm not going to deny that, okay? But just the tendency to try to add some kind of, I don't know, air of legitimacy or something to ye random presentation just by quoting Martin Luther King. You've seen it here on TEDXcellence several times, and again today. And that quote, it could be refitted to go towards any particular sense of a goal or hardship or something. Like, if you encounter an obstacle in life, if you encounter hardship or something else, don't give up. That's basically the root message of that quote. Don't give up. Even if you are knock down, even if you are only able to move a little bit towards your goal or towards a better situation, keep moving. All right, you know what? That's not bad advice. It's also completely boilerplate encouragement advice. In fact, I might even call it toxic positivity, depending on who it's being directed towards. But I've had my say. Now it's your turn, chat. If you have anything you'd like to add, any questions, any comments, any observations, any corrections for me, because God knows I've waded through a lot today, by all means, put them in the chat now. I'll give it about, say, 10 minutes, and we'll make up to just about an even hour on the show. Sasset of the Gray, Scribelight, how about removing the notion that being educated and working hard is action whoite? Acting, yeah. Aside from the fact that he said that his school is segregated by race and gender, which I just find preposterous in the situation of a publicly funded school. But again, I have no idea what the circumstances were here. The school was meant to serve a very specific demographic that our speaker, and I assume his supporters, saw as needing a special kind of help. I mean, he cited the literacy rate, at least in Washington, D.C., for men of color. Wide group that could be, but, you know. Anyway, let's see. Who else? Let's see. People are talking to each other. That's great. Maniac Man 2030. He didn't become a productive member. He became a demagogue. I can't assess, you know, what else. I think insofar as what he presented here, what he presented is confusing. Very confusing mission statement, very confusing arrangement, very confusing goal. I mean, he wants to produce agents of change. Change to what? To impart restorative justice on the rest of the world? He didn't cite, except for that J character, and I don't mean character in a derogatory mean, I just mean character in the story. He didn't cite any specifics about what those circles help to resolve or what kind of results his students had as of graduating from his school using all of his methods and policies and community and culture, which is very odd to me. I mean, maybe he started the school 6 months ago at the point of this recording and there wasn't any results yet. I don't know. But he said NPR followed him around forever, so there wasn't a single success story to cite? Not a one? And he didn't even address the school to prison pipeline thing much at all, except to say that somehow his school is magically not a part of that problem. Except he never did say that his school is not a part of that problem. It didn't help that he never described the problem. So anyway, Graf Spree, why do I get the feeling ever so slowly they want us to go back to how it was in the 60s? Well, I don't know how it was back in the 60s. Are you talking about race relations? I don't know. After the events of last night, and for those of you listening in the future, last night was the, so far at least, the highest spike in violence and quote-unquote protesting as a result of the death of George Floyd, who was killed by police officers. Minneapolis, basically, or parts of Minneapolis, were looted and burned down last night. Yeah, I mean, one could be forgiven for looking at scenes like that and thinking that we haven't made any progress at all in the last 50 years. But anyway, Andrew Joyner, what the F does he mean by restorative justice? So I've done a couple of videos on this. You can look back for anything that the phrase restorative justice is in there, or criminal justice or anything. Put simply, restorative justice means that instead of incarceration, let's say, the criminal or the perpetrator and the victim are put into a room together, and the criminal has an opportunity to try to explain and or apologize for themselves, and the victim has an opportunity to explain to the criminal or perpetrator the effect that their actions had on them. And as a result of this communion, understanding will be gained on both sides, and this will encourage the perpetrator to not commit such crimes in the future or something. That we need to have a conversation rather than incarceration. That is the underlying gist of the concept of restorative justice. Now, it can be variously defined in other places by other people, but that is my, at the very core, understanding of what it is and what it is meant to do. So, buyer beware, as it were, on trusting me with that definition. Go look it up, check out some other talks on it. I've done several videos in the past on restorative justice, and that's my understanding. Let's see. Anal in, these are real inside baseball talks. Maybe. I mean, it's. I always wonder. It's like, okay, is this really the inside scoop? Is this really the kind of mindset and or thinking and or cause effect argument conclusion that is driving schools these days, or businesses, or governmental institutions, and so on? Because even though these TEDx talks are technically sort of informal presentations, if I get a TEDx talk from someone who is a professional in their field, an expert of some kind, and our speaker here has a PhD, as he says, I don't know in what, but that's kind of beside the point to me, and also a principal of a school, someone who is meant to be leading the education of others, I have to assume that this is his best effort, right? I mean, in the absence of any other information, that this is his best effort at getting across who he is, what he's doing, and what he means to do by it. And so it's sort of like reading, I mentioned this last night on Lords of the Night, it's like reading the election pamphlet that you get during voting season. And I don't vote on the basis purely of party. 9 times out of 10, I vote based on what I have read of their official statement in the voters pamphlet. Because if you have someone running for a elected office, obviously, or especially someone who's looking to become a legislator of some kind, and their written official statement has spelling errors, or makes no sense, or at the very least doesn't convince me of getting my vote, I'm going to say, well, if this is the best this person is willing to put forward in trying to run for public office and get my vote, I have to assess them purely on the effort they put into this statement, because I don't have anything else to go off of. So insofar as I know our speaker, which I don't, this is his best effort at presenting his argument for why his school is necessary, or what change it is actually creating, or why his method is better than the other methods from other schools, and so on. And on that basis, he hasn't convinced me of anything. Thank you, Point Curation. Is it better to have principles or principals? I would say principles than principals, as long as you adhere to them. And also as long as your principles don't inherently require you to harm others or take advantage of others. I mean, some people have some pretty lousy principles. The honor among thieves kind of thing. Yeah, that's a principle. Sure. You still have to be a thief to practice it. Let's see. That one sort of Satania. I mean, they didn't teach him to teach, judging by the fact that we didn't learn the concept of one's why he talked about. Yeah, we never learned what he meant by one's why. We never learned what he means by the school to prison pipeline, or how his method is disrupting that. I mean, in order to say that you found a solution to the problem, you have to describe the problem and how your solution counters that. You just don't say the school to prison pipeline and give no context, and then say my school doesn't do what other schools do, and then never tell us what that means. It just, okay. I mean, I don't know. I think I inserted more knowledge about what the school to prison pipeline theory is in my introduction to this video than anything he said in the course of his 10-minute, almost 11-minute presentation. I might be blowing my own horn there, but I feel as though that is actually accurate. Some emulation scribe light. Shouldn't you consider adding hashtag pablum to these videos after it has been revealed? No. I mean, I don't want to give away my conclusion before before anybody watches it. I'm not a spoiler, really. Thank you, Chicago Mike. Hi, Scribe. I'm at work and not really watching. Hope you're enjoying the Pepper Jack. Well, I tell you, I needed it for this one because this guy was all over the place. He was traveling far afield, left, right, center, and all over, but he never really arrived anywhere. But judge that for what you will, guys. At that, I'm going to wrap it up here. Everyone, thank you so much for joining me for this. I don't know if it was it was educational from a certain point of view. Because if this is the height of thinking behind the initiatives of restorative justice in schools and disrupting the prison, the school to prison pipeline, then I think I learned something. Insofar as our speaker explaining to us what he does, how he does it, and why it's successful, not sure I learned much unless he's just not telling us for reasons I can't fathom. I can assume or guess, but I can't fathom otherwise. Anyway, all that being said, everyone, thank you for joining me today, going along with me on this little bit of catharsis that I really needed after last night and work today. Hope you are all safe and well. If you're not well, please get well soon. Thank you for your attendance. Thank you for your participation. And thank you for those of you that donated. Thank you so much for your generosity. If you'd like to hear more from me or Ranting Monkey or Satsu 2 Cents, you can catch us live tonight on Satsu 2 Cents' channel at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern for Lords of the Night. Otherwise, guys, hope you all have a good day, and I'll talk to you soon. Take care.